Could I get Mr. Soto to read the items on the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor. On the consent agenda is item A1, the minutes of the June 7th, 2021 agenda session meeting, and item 2, the minutes of June 15th, 2021 regular meeting.
Without objection, we'll leave those on the consent agenda. We have a presentation. What is this presentation about, Mr. Roder?
Okay, last year, I think we awarded a contract to
Stewart,
Stewart.
for our ADA self-assessment and transition plan. And we have tonight Doug Taylor and Harrison Winchell who've walked us through this. They've assisted us with the draft of the plan. Tonight, they want to give a very brief presentation just to give you an update. There is a public comment period that is ongoing now, and following the close of that and some final edits to the plan will bring you the plan itself for adoption.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Hi. My name is Harrison Winchell, Doug Taylor. We are with Stewart, transportation planner. Doug is the transportation practice area leader with Stewart. So in the fall, we started working with Pam, David, and Kathleen on the ADA transition plan. And basically, it's going to identify the facilities, programs, and services in the town that are compliant and non-compliant under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. So you can actually jump to the second slide. So we have basically been working to do a whole bunch of data collection, self-evaluation of everything from town communication policies to the website accessibility, data collection in the public right-of-way, data collection with the facilities, the buildings, the parks, parking, you name it, everything kind of all encompassing in this plan. As far as the Stewart staff, we've been more of the project management, some of the data collection, public involvement, and the development of the plan itself. And then we've been working, like I said, with town staff for more of the project oversight, some of the facility data collection as well. You can jump ahead. So this is a snapshot of what has been collected thus far. Essentially, the 5 main areas of the self-evaluation, like I said, cover communication, website, program accessibility, staff awareness of the responsibilities of Title II. Then if you move into the data collection, you can think of that as 3 separate components to the data collection. So you have the public right-of-way, which covers the curb ramps and hazards identified out in the field. So we came out with the GIS app and geolocated the actual curb ramps. We measured for slope and grade and any trip hazards, maintenance hazards. And then we also had David and his team evaluated the facilities using standardized checklists that are straight from the ADA regulations. And then also the public involvement data collection via an online survey that is live right now. So far, we've had 25 survey respondents. We've also directly contacted stakeholders in the area to ask for their input, to ask if they have channels that they can kind of distribute that survey link to, and today's presentation as well. And so all of that essentially gets boiled down into recommendations for the plan, a punch list, if you will, of what's non-compliant, what needs to be repaired moving forward. Next slide.
Is the survey is still open?
Yep, survey is live. I have a few slides on that with the link as well.
Okay.
It is on the town website.
Okay.
It'll be live till August 16th.
Okay, thank you.
And so just to give you an example, the facilities that we looked at, both fire stations, town hall building, parks, and Magnolia Cemetery. Next slide. So this is just showing kind of a snapshot of what the survey itself looks like on the website, but the survey is about 12 questions long, and it covers everything from accessibility of town sidewalks, accessibility of buildings, park and rec facilities, asks questions on, open-ended questions where people feel that improvement needs to be made throughout town. The survey link is there, but like I said, it is on the town website. We can jump ahead to,
But it's on the front page of the website,
yeah,
on the scrolling part of the top.
yes. Next slide. These are just example screenshots of the questions, but the content is the same. Move ahead, yep. And to the next one, to the diagram. This is a general overview diagram of the ADA planning process. The very first step that we did was establish David Murphy as the ADA coordinator. So he is the public point of contact. He is the person that's going to kind of be championing this thing moving forward to make sure that things get done. We also developed a grievance procedure specific to ADA topics and a public notice to let the public know what was going on. The public involvement is, we like to think of it as broken into three types of sections. So that is the direct outreach to the stakeholders that I mentioned. It's the online survey, and it's today's presentation as well. Next slide. I'm sorry, can you go back to the diagram? One before. So essentially, after the public participation process, we moved into the facility evaluation and did the mass data gathering over several months. And all of that data goes into the plan, like I've said. And, we have maps, we have tables, we have schedules of target years of when these things need to be, or when they're recommended that they should be improved, given staffing and financial, abilities. And so in short, when the plan is adopted, it kicks in a 5-year window of when the town has to improve those facilities that were determined to be non-compliant. But under federal regulation, it is okay if not 100% of what was determined non-compliant is not done within that 5-year window. The town really just needs to be working towards achieving 100% compliance. But again, given staffing and financials, it may not be doable in that 5-year window. So after that 5-year window, you reassess, see what's left, and keep working at it.
Is there a percentage that has to be done in that 5 years window?
There isn't. The language is clear and conscious effort, and not just kind of putting it on the shelf. But as long as a conscious effort is done, like these guys have definitely been doing since last year, you guys are in good hands for sure. And so that kind of, we like to think of it as a living document. So every 5 years is when you're required to kind of re-up it, but we recommend at least annual or semi-annual just review of the plan, see what was done in that time frame, see maybe what was not originally identified and what new items might be need to be repaired. So you can skip ahead. Just Title II, essentially, of the Americans with Disabilities Act requires municipalities have a plan in place or are working towards having a plan in place to accommodate those who use public facilities. So there are FHWA requirements that apply to areas in the right of way. So specifically crosswalks and programs, which are things that we look at in the data collection, grading, slope, handrails. So it gets down into the weeds. But all of that gets summarized into the plan. And then next slide. We like to break it up into short, mid, and long-range priority topics. So the short-term projects are things like restriping parking spaces. Your midterm projects are going to be things that are going to require a little allocation and budgeting, but they'll be more manageable, like water fountains or handrails. The long-term projects are things that would need to be funded through the capital improvement program or other, grants or other sources. But that's going to be your permanent, changes, structural changes to buildings, reconfiguring bathrooms, adding ramps, that sort of thing. So when we make the recommendations and the target years, we're keeping this in mind to, plan out the next steps accordingly. Next slide. Kind of already touched on this, but essentially it's a living document. So again, once we wrap up the comment period, that's really the last piece, is getting those comments incorporated into the plan, and then we'll have a final draft ready for your review. And at that point, it would essentially start that 5-year window, and the town would start working towards ADA compliance on what was identified. And as far as next steps, the survey that's live right now runs till August 16th. So after August 16th, we will essentially summarize the 25 or so comments that we've gotten so far, in addition to whatever else we receive, and have a final plan ready to go for review sometime in the next month or so.
Where we are today, how do we compare with other municipalities about the same size?
In terms of, so there's the different aspects.
Behind the curve, ahead of the curve?
I'd say on par. I mean, really the biggest difference that we see from town to town is not so much what is non-compliant. It's really the staff behind it, because if there's nobody driving it, that's when it just slips through the cracks. And that's when you have all this stuff that's identified that needs to be repaired and made compliant, and it never gets done. So
Is the university involved with this?
so this actually applies to just publicly owned and publicly accessible properties. Yep. So the university was not considered when we did the data review. So in terms of Parks and Rec, I'd say you guys are probably above the curve. Slade Park, in my opinion, is a great example that we have referenced other towns to specifically look at the playground, because that is ADA compliant, except for a few aspects, but it's in good shape. The public right-of-way, I was on the way over here looking at some of the survey results that we've gotten so far, and the common theme kind of seemed to be that, the gaps in the sidewalk network, or missing sidewalk or narrow sidewalk, something to that effect, seemed to be a recurring comment that people made in the survey. I think you guys are aware of that already, but we'll see what else comes in. But yeah, I think you guys are in good shape, and really moving forward is the important part, and how you guys kind of keep it at the forefront and keep planning for the projects that need to be done.
Thank you. Other comments from board members?
On the one side, you had 3.25 miles of sidewalk. Is that 3.2 miles total sidewalk?
That's just what we looked at during the data
Okay.
collection. So Stewart staff came out for a day, and we picked up the curb ramps and the maintenance hazards. And in that effort, we covered just over 3 miles of sidewalk.
Okay.
So in that 3.25 miles, I think it was like 68 curbs that were out of compliant.
Yeah, I think it was 60. You mind going back to the slide, Pam?
Yeah, I think it was like the second slide.
68 hazards, 97 curb ramps.
So if our town has how many miles of sidewalks? 20 miles, 15 miles of sidewalks total?
Well, about 20 plus miles of roads.
How many miles of sidewalk? Because you have sidewalks on both sides, some areas, and some no sidewalks.
Some non, I couldn't tell you.
5 to 10 maybe.
I would say no more than half,
Yeah.
less than half.
So just say we had 10 miles of sidewalks, right? Would that be representative of could we multiply it times 3 and say, we've got that many issues that we've got to contend with?
More or less, it would probably be less than multiplying it by 3, just because we started right outside of town hall and kind of worked our way outwards. So typically your more trafficked areas are going to be the ones that are more worn down and everything. So if you wanted to, you could. We just kind of looked at what we could cover in that day, but it's probably a representative sample.
How does that compare to other municipalities that you've done recently, as far as the number of, with the sidewalks, the number of?
It's low. It's low. Yeah. And when we say hazards, I mean, it's things as little as overhanging shrubs for somebody that's walking and, may hit their head or something, or it could be something more major, like the sidewalk is not, the proper width and somebody in a wheelchair just simply couldn't get by.
Utility pole below the sidewalk.
Or utility poles, though we did pick up some of those as well. And so, and people noted that too. People are aware of some of those concerns, but those are really what we're going after, is more of the obvious, so that, an able-bodied person might be able to step into the street and walk around something like that. But you have to think of somebody in a mobility device is kind of what it's geared towards.
If someone's private shrubs and trees come over the sidewalk, whose responsibility is that? I mean, if the town were to go and chop them down, is it a problem? Like, does that private owner of that tree then have a grievance?
We do it periodically, and
We've had grievances, haven't we?
yes, we have. And they often come into us by request, but it tends to happen at the same locations for the most part. And they're accustomed to our staff going in and trimming those back.
I mean, the right of way is the right of way, and the Davis is not here, but Duke Power Swing has to contend with that, and they get a lot of public pushback as well when they have to go and alter trees.
That's right.
Right.
Or overhanging. And I would say, Monty, to your question, a lot of the sidewalks that aren't included in that 3.25 miles are with newer subdivisions and have been installed more recently and are likely to have fewer deficiencies than the ones that they did study.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Just as a quick add-on, we have just let a contract to modify the front counter, which is non-compliant, bring that into compliance. And we also have additional funds in the current year budget, just once we get this plan in place to start working on the first round of, we don't have a lot of money yet because we weren't sure what we would be looking at, but we do have money available and we'll be budgeting for that on an annual basis to keep going, making progress.
And we budgeted for handicap accessibility to the front door. To get to the counter, you've got to be able to get to the front door.
And
Something that was picked up in the plan as well. So it is noted that need to be done.
And we have a
More of a long-term.
ramp design,
Yeah.
hasn't yet been budgeted for or let out for bid.
Yeah.
I just want to mention too that this project, David Murphy, who, as you know, as our Assistant Public Works Director, was sort of assigned the task of the ADA coordinator for this, and he's been managing the meetings and the work and working most directly with Stuart, and has done a fabulous job. Just want to thank him for the efforts that have gone into that, and they will be ongoing.
As a kick to that, I'd like to thank them for being good to work with. Pam's had a lot of input, and Kathleen's worked extra hard as the PIO. She had a lot of work to do, putting stuff out on the website and social media. So,
Like I said, you guys are in good hands moving forward.
Is it disappointing? I mean, it's disappointing to me only 25 people responded, and I was one of them on the survey. So do you think it's because people look at ADA as not something that affects them because they're not disabled? And so therefore they have no opinion?
Sometimes we run across that. We also run across kind of the other side of the argument where you have like concerned parents and, people that are filling out the survey on behalf of someone else. But yeah, sometimes, because again, like utility pole, right? Like, most people in the room might not think twice about having to just kind of walk around and step in the street. But if somebody can't go about their daily life because of something that's obstructing them, it makes a difference. So.
I mean, as a parent who I've pushed a stroller up and down our sidewalks, my daughter has fallen multiple times on our sidewalks on a bicycle. She's gone head first over, a curb in this town, on a scooter. So, I mean, even from that perspective, I think that, I'm going to send it out and I'm going to encourage parents to complete it and think about how many times their children have gone in a stroller, and then putting that in perspective of someone who may be in a wheelchair or maybe, have to walk with a cane or, whatever it is, to really think about that approach to it. Because I think really for us, the biggest issue is kind of just like right here and down to the new sidewalk. There's a lot of cracks and it's narrow and, this right here is fairly problematic.
Yeah,
for
we,
wheels in general. So I can't even imagine, if someone had a wide wheelchair, I don't even know if they would fit over there in front of the veterinary office on the sidewalk.
right. Yeah, we looked at that. I would encourage, if you take the survey link, distribute to your channels, it's only going to make for a better product in the end. To get more input, maybe it calls to your attention something that you weren't aware of previously, that could kind of be incorporated into the discussion. So
Thank you so much.
thank you, appreciate y'all.
Before we open our public comment section, Mr. Soda, who all do we have online?
Mayor, we have Diane Enoch and Misty Haygood is online, and of course Davis is, and Kathleen is joining us from her office.
Okay, thank you so much. Public comments. Are there any citizens here tonight that want to make any comments to this board about their wishes or concerns for the town? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment section. If our guests want to list themselves, they can. Let's see. The resolution providing for application to the LGC for approved enterprise system.
Yes, as you are all aware, we are in the process of purchasing a pump station from the town of Gibsonville. And we will be making that purchase by the end of this calendar year. So it'll be in December. And in order to do that, they would like our checks not to bounce. So we are working with Davenport, Mitch, please. Virgulio is here tonight to talk about the process we've been going through. From that aspect, we brought on bond counsel. Mary Nash has been helping us with the paperwork. We've recently completed the rate study that Wildan did for us. All of that leading into us going to the local government commission to seek approval to borrow money to buy this pump station. And part of what Mitch will be going over is we went out to bid for bonds, and we got 4 banks that gave us proposals, and we'll be talking about those proposals this evening as well. Mitch, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members. Thank you for having me this evening. I apologize. I woke up this morning with a hoarse voice, so I'll try to speak a little bit louder. As Mr. Roedner said, Mitch Virgulio with Davenport and Company. We've been y'all's financial advisor for a number of years now. I know we've had some conversations about other bank proposals and in particular, a lot of conversations about the Travis Creek pump station. You all, as Mr. Roedner said, have entered into that asset purchase agreement with Gibsonville. And that process is ongoing. The deadline to make that payment is December 1st. In talking with staff, we developed a financing plan to make that payment, which included the issuance of water and sewer revenue bonds. Those water and sewer revenue bonds will be secured by the net revenues of the water and sewer system. So that means that when we enter into a loan, the lender, their security for the loan will be the net revenues generated from the system. So you collect your revenues, you pay your operating expenses, and what's left over after you pay your expenses to operate the system, the lender has a lien on those revenues to pay their annual principal and interest payment. If your net revenues are insufficient to pay the lender what they're owed, principal and interest, then under the revenue bond agreement, and there'll be a number of documents that memorialize this, but high level, under that agreement, you will be required to raise rates and charges to a level sufficient to pay the principal and interest due on the loan. So unlike we did for the fire truck a couple of years ago, the fire truck served as collateral. So in that instance, if you don't pay your principal and interest, they come take the fire truck. In this case, there is a different kind of contractual agreement that will require you all to raise rates and charges sufficiently to pay debt service, which is principal and interest on the loan. It's a very common structure in North Carolina for financing water and sewer improvements. It will provide you all flexibility moving forward for other water and sewer improvements. Once we have this revenue bond set up, the way that we're working with bond counsel to set up the documents, it will allow you to issue additional revenue bonds in the future under this structure, so under the same lien of water and sewer revenues, so long as you can demonstrate your ability to meet certain hurdles and pay the debt service in the future, you'll be able to issue additional water and sewer revenue bonds, which we find important, we think is a good thing for water and sewer projects, because if you think about it, a lender, of course, they love taking a fire truck. That's easy to come and grab. They love taking town hall. That's a really good asset that you all need to operate out of. So if they come and take it, you're in trouble. Taking a lien on a water and sewer line is a little more difficult for a lender. So this will kind of open up for you in the future. If you need to do a financing for water and sewer lines or for other water and sewer improvements, you'll have this as a tool to go to. And in fact, one of the things that you'll be agreeing to is that you won't place liens on major assets within your water and sewer system. You'll use this structure to issue future needs for the water and sewer system. So that's just a little bit of background on the financing mechanism. Payment is due to Gibsonville on December 1st. So you may say, well, why is it August 2nd and you're talking to me? Well, we want to make sure the money's in place. So in talking with staff, we decided to go along this schedule for a September closing of the water and sewer revenue bonds so that the money is in hand. And if there's any hiccup along the way, unexpected hiccup, we've got some time to work it out and make sure the financing is in place when the money is due. So with that in mind, we went out with a direct bank loan RFP. We sent it out to over 50 national, regional, and local banks and lending institutions who participate regularly in these type of loans. And we received 4 responses, which we were very pleased with. For perspective, there's only a handful of banks that are going out 20 years. So when we ask for a loan for up to 20 years, we don't expect for all 50 to respond. Some of those 50 are folks that mainly participate in Western or Eastern North Carolina that occasionally will do something in the Piedmont, but not all the time. Others are only going to go out 5 or 10 years in their regular course of business. So not surprising that all 50 don't respond. And we were very pleased with the 4 responses. You can see Capital One, public funding, and I should have mentioned, you have this summary memo in front of you. And then there's a little more detailed presentation in the back. I'm going to kind of hit on the high points on the summary memo. Page 1 at the bottom shows you the banks that responded. Capital One, which is a national lending institution, Pinnacle Financial Partners, which is a little more regional. That's the old Bank of North Carolina that merged with Pinnacle Bank. So Bank of North Carolina is obviously local here. Sterling National Bank, which is more of a national regional bank, and then Truist Bank, which is the combined BB&T and SunTrust Bank. So local, regional, and national there. We received 4 responses for 15-year terms and 3 responses for the 20-year terms. Sterling National Bank provided the lowest rate for both. And then Pinnacle Financial Partners also offered a competitive proposal for the 15-year. So we kind of focused our summary memorandum on those 2, Sterling National Bank and Pinnacle Financial Partners. Page 2 is a summary of some of the other terms and conditions, key terms and conditions of those loans. Prepayment provisions. Pinnacle provided the most prepayment flexibility, prepayable in whole or in part at any time, whereas Sterling, you're going to be non-prepayable for the first 5 years. And then after that, after 5 years, you can prepay it. In years 6 through 9, there is a 1% penalty, and then it's prepayable without penalty after that. And one of the other common questions is, what about fees? Sterling is charging no bank fees. Pinnacle Bank had a fee for their lenders council, which was not to exceed $5,000. Okay. I think most importantly for y'all's consideration here on page 3 is a summary of your estimated payments that result from this financing. So again, Sterling National Bank provided the lowest rates for 15 years. They were a 1.72%, which when factoring in the cost of the pump station and the financing costs associated with it, particularly with setting up this revenue bond structure. The annual payments based upon that 172 are about $150,000 to $153,000 a year. Call it $150,000 a year for talking purposes. Pinnacle Financial Partners, they had a slightly higher rate, and they had $5,000 more in cost of issuance for their lenders council, which results in an annual payment of about anywhere between $150,000 and $155,000 a year. So in total, all in total difference in payments over the life of the loan, it's about $20,000. So Sterling is $20,000 less than Pinnacle. Sterling also provided a 20-year total principal and interest payment compared to their 15-year more. The annual, that's kind of
on 15-year versus 20 years is if you're not able, I guess, Rich, we have to make these loan payments from the revenue generated from the water sewer collections.
Yes.
So the only risk would be is that if we didn't generate enough water sewer sales, then would we be in a difficult situation? How would we make up that?
On the first year, we'd have to go to we go to our fund balance or cut back operating expenses in that first year. And in the second year, we'd have to raise rates to compensate.
So that's our alternative. Obviously, if you lose, say, you had a big consumer that stopped, terminated their service, we could be hampered there. And I guess
Correct.
we're protected that Burlington couldn't go direct to the ETJ. I guess they could. That's an area where you talk about growth. ETJ, that would certainly help us. Yeah, I think the 15-year makes sense.
Yeah, when we talked about it, saving $250,000 of ratepayers' money over 20 years, worthwhile. And the $20,000 savings between Pinnacle and Sterling, a little bit lower payment, okay, makes sense. But the only difference was the ability to pay off early.
Well, there's little risk in us being able to do that if we're basically trying to maintain the lowest rates as possible. So unless we were, which would be foolish to increase your sewer rates.
Well, unless we got grant funding or, new funding came in that we could use to pay off an existing debt as opposed to something new, which is not likely, but I suppose it could happen. But even with the penalty that we pay to pay off early, we'd still be less than what Pinnacle is.
Yeah, I can't see the first 5 years that being something we would be in a position to do.
Well, the other thing is too, as Mitch kind of pointed out, I mean, face it, interest rates are gonna go back up.
Yeah.
And so, who knows, in 3 years, you may be rates at 4% on that you can get a return on. That doesn't sound like, over time, that's not a whole lot, but compared to what the low rate environment we've been in, and so, paying it off early may be foolish actually from that perspective.
Right. The other advantage Mitch, the other advantage in my mind to the 15 versus 20 is we're paying down the principal faster in case we have to do another loan. If we have another major project we need to borrow money on, our borrowing capacity is replenished sooner in a 15-year scenario than in a 20. Oh, sorry.
Well, and I was just going to say, Mr. Allison, to your point, what happens if we can't pay it? Well, so in the current year, if you find you're coming up short, that's where, may need to go into fund balance, look at your operating expenses, et cetera. But going forward, you're entering into a contract with the bondholder. In this case, it'll be one lender, Sterling National Bank, that you are going to generate net revenues sufficient to pay that debt service. If you don't do that, you have a contract, it's called a trust agreement, that's going to tell you what you have to do. And what it says is you've got to do what it takes with rates and charges to pay the debt service. If you don't do that proactively yourselves, the trustee can come in who administers this contract. They come in and say, Town of Elon, you're not in compliance with your contract. You need to go out and hire a rate consultant, and you need to implement the recommendations of the rate consultant in order to be able to pay back your principal and interest payments to your bondholder. So it's a balance there, and there's a fine line between you all doing things proactively, but if you don't do it, then you're contractually obligated to go out and have somebody tell you what you need to do to make those payments. So I think that was just an important distinction I think you all should be aware of, that it is a contractual obligation to do so.
Another question I had, Rich, obviously with the fire truck, it was insured.
Yep.
In a destruction of some sort. With the sewer water infrastructure, the pump station obviously is a capital piece of equipment that could fail. Is that insured?
All of our property is insured.
Yeah.
Is it insured against declining maintenance or, valve let loose? No. Is it
Maintenance, but if something drastically happens,
Yeah,
somebody
tree falls on it, somebody drives off the road and wipes it out?
blow it up.
We have property insurance for those kind of incidents.
And you're entering into a contract, you're thinking about it, the lender's thinking about it. There is a requirement to maintain proper insurance on the
Yeah, I
system.
wouldn't talk so much about maintenance, but just in the event something more catastrophic would happen.
If we were to ignore it.
Yeah.
And the pumps failed, that's on us. So again, budgetarily, we've included in the budget a maintenance line for that pump station, be able to demonstrate that, we're gonna be keeping that up to par so that we don't have those kind of issues.
Buying a used car. Buy it as is.
It is, except we've got an awful lot more people relying on that pump station than on a used car, and if it stops pumping, we're in a world of hurt.
And I think, to keep with the metaphor, you asked for the Carfax, right? You went and you had the evaluation done on the pump station. So you've done that part, and then the outfall line is brand new. So, I think, you all have certainly done due diligence in making that purchase.
I'm sure this is in our water and rate study when we talked about it. But obviously y'all don't feel this is a big risk of us not being able to pay for this with the residents of the town paying their water bill. But what percentage of this annually would it be from our current revenue?
I think our total revenue, on the order of $3.5 million. So this is 10%,
Yeah.
something like that.
Curious.
Okay, so I think I'm happy to continue answering questions, but just in the interest of making sure we know what's coming next. So at your August 10th meeting, y'all will be asked to consider approving the winning lender, which again, staff, our recommendation is the Sterling National Bank 15-year proposal. And if y'all have concerns with that, we're certainly happy to run some different numbers or show you whatever you need to say. But that's going to be our recommendation currently. And then you're going to be asked to adopt a preliminary findings resolution, which among other things, authorizes staff, or in this case, it will ratify staff's submission of the local government commission application and make certain findings that the local government commission asks you to make, because they have to make them when offering their approval. And so several of the findings are that the borrowing is adequate but not excessive. Check, we know what the purchase price is, and we're borrowing enough to pay that purchase. We're borrowing the exact amount to pay that purchase price. One of the other findings that they have to make is that you're able to repay this debt service, and that your rates and charges are sufficient to do that and not overly excessive. And so that's another one of the findings that you all will be making, is that you're able to generate this level of revenue to pay the debt service, and then it's not excessive. And so that's where that rate study comes in, that you all have seen the couple of years of rate increases that are planned. So you've done that work on the front end, but those are the type of findings that you all will be making as part of that resolution. And so that's the first resolution that y'all will have. And then we'll come back to y'all at your September 14th meeting for a final approving resolution. That's your final action, where you're going to be approving all the documentation of the loan, which includes what I've been referring to colloquially as the contract tonight that you're going to be entering into, that has the key terms and conditions and all the things that you're agreeing to when entering into this loan and potentially future water and sewer revenue bond loans. What we're going to have is a master indenture that will live forever. And then we're going to have a supplemental indenture that'll be specific to this series of bonds. And then in the future, if you need to issue another series of bonds, there will be a second supplemental or a series indenture number 2 under that master agreement. So you'll be approving all of that. as part of the September 14th meeting. We'll also be going to the LGC, Local Government Commission, on September 14th. That'll be before y'all's meeting. That'll be at 1:30 in the afternoon. And then we've got a deadline to close on the financing of September 24th. That's Sterling National Bank's rate lock. So once you all in the Local Government Commission hopefully approve the financing, then we'll be in a position to close before that September 24th rate lock.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Please feel free to leave if you want to.
I appreciate it.
Next item, new business. Consideration of amendment to retirement benefit.
Okay, this is more of a discussion item. I don't have any formal policy prepared for you, but the question was raised about how we can assist retirees who take early retirement. Obviously, if somebody waits until they're 67 and retires, they're on Medicare by then, they get full Social Security. If they choose to retire at 63 for early retirement, they're not eligible for Medicare until they're 65. There are some jurisdictions that guarantee employees health coverage from the date they retire until they turn 65. We don't do that. And for various reasons, namely the state of North Carolina allows some municipal employees to retire after 20 years of service. So you can see people retiring at the age of 40. And do we want to be paying for 25 years of health coverage for a retired employee? So you have that population that may look at retiring early. One of the biggest expenses they're faced with is healthcare for that period of time before Medicare kicks in. What we talked about, what we're suggesting we might want to consider is a bonus payment for at the time of retirement, that in the case of somebody who is retiring at the age of 63 or 63 and a half, could cover up to say half of their insurance payments up until before they turn 65. So kind of splitting that with them to get them halfway through to 65, and then they have to carry the rest of it. Right now, our annual cost for an employee's health plan is $8,000, somewhere in that ballpark. So wouldn't be talking about a huge sum of money, and it would be coming out of money that's already budgeted under the existing payroll lines. We seldom have somebody walking in the door when somebody's walking out the door. So there's usually a period where we're not paying out anything. So we don't see this being a significant budgetary impact on the town. It would be a way to help somebody who's looking for early retirement, gives them a long-term benefit, and that it helps boost their last year's salary, which affects what their North Carolina state retirement payments would be. Because it's based on the last several years, an average of the last several years. So we thought it might be something that we could include into our benefit or an incentive package, if you will, for those who are looking long-term, that might make us a little bit more attractive as an employer, perhaps, than we are today. Not that we're not an unattractive employer, but it certainly helps.
What do other municipalities do in this case? I guess they all run into it.
Some do nothing. Some have a similar bonus program that we're talking about. And some municipalities still cover full insurance costs for the employee till they turn 65. A couple of communities, one community that we know of does both. They cover it and give a bonus. They are fortunate to have valuation and the property values that we will never see, but.
Does that run the gamut in Alamance County too?
Yeah.
All those places you suggested were in Alamance County?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely think we have to look at it from the standpoint of being competitive and attracting good talent. I see in so many cases where people who probably have over 30 years probably should have retired, but they don't because of the healthcare. With that being said, $8,000 is a lot of money to give to someone.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be is, with our small population of employees, if we set that threshold at 30 years, because the police officers have a 20-year, right?
Yeah, police officer can retire at 20.
And there's a little different. And obviously, I don't try to compare those two roles because obviously I think most of them are underpaid anyway. That's just a benefit they have. But I think it's something we should look at and at least compare with the county. I think the county has changed theirs over the last several years where somebody retired at 30 years, they had full medical coverage. And I think the new hires now are something less than that. And so I think it'd be interesting to see that we should at least be equal to what they offer. That's my personal opinion, is that,
Equal to what the county offers?
yeah,
I don't think we can afford what the county offers.
we know what they offer.
Month salary.
Yeah,
What are they doing?
it's
Clarify.
it's not $8,000, it's a month's salary
The 8,000 is what it would cost.
For healthcare.
for health coverage. For folks at the top end of our salaries, it would probably cover half of that 18 months from early retirement. For people who are at the lower end of the wage scale, it would cover less than that 18 months, or less than half that 18 months.
I mean, but if somebody came here and worked at 25 and they want to retire in 30 years, you got 5 years at least that you're going to pay to their 65, 10 years to their 65. So that could be, obviously down the road, that's going to be more than 8,000 a year. It's going to be probably like 15,000 a year. And we've seen medical.
If we were covering all their medical costs,
Cover all that.
right?
So the question really is, what's a fair benefit? Is if you took the difference between what they could do on private pay and you subsidize that somehow with a bonus, as you said, that might be a fair offer.
The other thing to think of is we were looking in terms of COBRA,
Yeah.
where they can continue to buy our insurance once they retire for a period of 18 months. That's a 63 and a half. If somebody is retiring at 48, even if they put in 30 years, it's likely that they're going on to something else because they got to afford healthcare somehow.
Have we also looked at offering a benefit of a retirement health savings plan?
But not.
So it just might be something to look at,
Yeah.
where, maybe instead of this bonus, maybe it's part of like a wellness type incentive where if you enroll in the retirement health savings plan and do X, Y, or Z, we will also contribute however much a year. I mean, maybe it's only $100 a year per employee, but that adds up because that person who's just starting their career, they come to work for us at age, let's say 35, and they contribute into that retirement health savings plan that could also be invested to gain funds. I mean, they could retire
That's a
in
good
20 or
idea.
30 years with a massive amount of money.
That's a good idea, and they see it now, not 30 years down the road. If somebody could build a health savings account, nest egg, that certainly gives them some incentive to retire and maybe go on COBRA for 16, 18 months or whatever. I think it's a good idea to take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of a retirement health savings plan. I mean, a lot of younger people don't look at that,
Yeah.
but it's like, you can go online and you can see how much is healthcare going to cost me in retirement based off of my age and my health status. And I mean, it's a huge amount of money. So like, while it's awesome to say like, yeah, we're going to pay you, 1 month salary, I don't know that that actually is going to benefit them long-term unless they're almost at age 65. I like this concept, but I think that we should also look at if there is the opportunity to offer that retirement health savings plan. And what my employer does is if you do something, they will contribute to that in the same way like they do an HSA. It doesn't have to be a ton of money, but like once they get so much in it, they can then start investing it and make money off of that account.
We can take a look at that.
Davis had a question also, which was, shouldn't we consider the entire benefits package and not look at this in isolation? In the chat.
The entire retirement benefits or entire benefits for current employees, Davis?
We're talking about be competitive with other towns and other cities, and there may be aspects of our current benefits package that's better than certain aspects of theirs and certain aspects that may be worse. So I would say we need to consider this as part of the entire incentive benefits package that we offer, not just a standalone.
In thinking in terms of retirement, I would say I think Elon has a very generous retirement benefit package. Not only are we involved in Social Security, but the town also matches for North Carolina State Retirement, matches for 401 contributions. It's quite generous from my experience, from other places I've worked that might contribute to a 457 plan or something like that. And some communities don't even do Social Security. So
How much does the town match for the 401? Do what?
I want to say it's either 5 or 6%.
5%.
5%.
Is it 5%?
Yeah.
That's really good.
Without a contribution.
Yeah.
So employee then contributes, and then employees also have access to 457, the 457 plan without a town contribution. And there's also the state retirement program, which I want to say our share is over 11%. So it adds up.
Any more discussion on this item? I think this is just for consideration. Mr. Rhodes,
Sure, right.
this is just for consideration. This does not mean.
This was for discussion that we just had, so I can get your suggestions back. And we'll continue working on it.
Thank you.
And before we go too far, we skip the budget amendment, item number B under ordinances and resolutions.
Budget.
You've all heard the issues that are out there right now with respect to purchasing vehicles. New ones you can't get and used ones you can't afford. That is affecting cruisers and police vehicles as well. We've ordered, we are planning on purchasing 2 hybrid police vehicles. They are not available. They just do not exist right now. So we've put in an order for 2 standard gas engines. Those are months and months and months and months away. We had a plan to use some of the forfeiture money to purchase an administrative vehicle. We found a 21 Dodge Durango that is a V6, so it doesn't match our V8s in terms of frontline cruisers, but this is actually a police package. And it's about $30,000. And we've got the money in the asset forfeiture account. We hadn't budgeted for that kind of a purchase. So we wanted to bring it back to you to seek a budget amendment. The owner is holding it for us. And I didn't get in touch with the chief this afternoon like I had hoped to find out how long they're holding it for us. But if there is willingness and consent, I would ask the board to consider even voting on that tonight so that we're not running the risk of losing access to that vehicle.
What is the timeline for new vehicles? So like, when would we look at replacing a 2021 vehicle?
I'm thinking it's between 5 and 7 years. You know, if you look at some of the ones that we're planning on replacing with the 2 vehicles that we got this past April, I believe they showed up, which we ordered previous July. They replaced vehicles that I think were 7, 8 years old.
But this would be an administrative vehicle, so it wouldn't have the mileage that a typical patrol car would, right?
Correct, yeah.
So it could last longer, or it could be rotated out in another capacity, I guess.
Yeah, now this has a police package. It won't be outfitted with, the radar and the lights and all that kind of stuff. It could be. So I mean, if we ran into an issue at some point, we lost a vehicle, we could convert this to a patrol vehicle as opposed to an admin.
Yeah, because if one of our vehicles got totaled now,
It'd be a wait.
it'd be a way to.
Might get the insurance payment, but we'd have to wait to find a vehicle. Yeah.
Do we have a motion? Or-
I was just gonna say, I think that it's a need. I think it's unfortunate that we can't make a purchase for a more sustainable vehicle, but I mean, the V6, I guess technically would be more sustainable than the V8, but I mean, that's kind of pushing it.
The 21s are all done. So that they don't exist anymore for sale. They stopped making them early this year. They've not started the 22s. I think what's happening is they are focusing on standard police vehicles rather than the hybrids. And even those they can't get the electronics.
Yeah. Well, when we look to replace this, it'll probably be all electric anyway, so.
And we looked at electric, but none of them are certified yet.
Yeah.
So that'll be the next thing, waiting to get certified police package vehicles.
Do we have a motion to approve the amendment?
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Well, thank you very much.
Report, town manager report.
All right. Those of you who happen to be downtown today, you saw a lot of yellow vehicles out on Lebanon. We've started grinding down the first block of West Lebanon. The first block of West Trollinger will follow, and both of those will be paved in the next day or two. So for anybody who's traveling down that part of town, be aware, there will be road closures at times, and so pay attention and be safe. Part of last year's part of the budget was we had money in there to purchase a generator for town hall. The town hall computer system is the main server for all of our town facilities. Phone system comes through here. All the emails come through here. When we go down, the whole system goes down. So we're installing a generator, and in order to install the generator, make sure our system doesn't go down, we have to shut down our system for a period of time while they're doing all the electrical work. I think I had talked, we were looking at this coming Friday afternoon. Contractors concerned just not knowing exactly what's going to happen when they start pulling apart the electrical box to get into it. They've asked for a little bit more time. What I'm recommending is that we close the town offices Friday at 11, because once we shut things down, obviously we won't have power. We won't have phones. We won't have computers. We won't have internet. We don't have email. We won't even be able to work from home because the servers will be shut down. So I'd like to close the town offices at 11 on Friday, allow them to finish installing that generator so that future events, we won't be without services. Music to Dine By is coming back after a short hiatus, starting Friday, August 13th, and it will continue through Friday, October 8th. So that's coming back and reopening, and it's been very well received. People have really enjoyed it. It's going to continue to alternate between West College and West Lebanon. Saturday, August 28th is our next community cleanup day. And I'm hoping that during the board report, somebody will tell us the timing and the locations. If those are known yet. I have them down here as to be determined, but.
I have a question for you, Mr. Rudner.
Yes.
I might misunderstood the conversation, but I talked about picking up on University Drive.
Yeah.
And you indicated we aren't allowed to do that,
NCDOT advised against it.
but we can do it.
We can do it, yes.
Because I noticed there's 2 signs that says adopted by, so somebody's picking it.
I suspect you're right. Yeah.
Supposed to be.
Hmm?
Or they're supposed to be,
Oh,
right?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Maybe we need to reach out to those 2 organizations.
Yeah, there's also one on Westbrook that is adopted by, and I think that's an old sign as well.
Well, I know I got concerned about it a few years ago and I called the county. And they said, I had a drawer down there. And I said, y'all ever try to enforce it? They said, no, we don't have time. But if you go down Westbrook or University Drive or some streets like that, they need picking up a little bit.
Who oversees the Adopt a Highway program?
At DOT,
Is it a DOT program?
I believe it is, yeah.
But I think it's operated by each county.
Okay, that could be.
I think.
I don't know.
You might want to check on that because I'm not sure. But I'll give you one example. There was the university. Some group over there adopted a highway. And I just knew the guy who was the head of that organization. He said, that was the previous guy. I'm not gonna pick up that anymore. So I think what happens, people adopt it and then they bow out and the sign stays there.
Adds to the litter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other items?
Last comment. Just as a reminder, particularly as we've seen numbers of COVID infections surge across the state, here in Alamance County as well, that we are asking all folks who are coming into town hall to please put on a mask. We're not going to throw you out, but we would really appreciate it if you had a mask on. And staff is going to be directed that they should be wearing masks when they're dealing with the public again. And we are looking at, or I am looking at, requiring proof of vaccination from our employees. As the governor announced on Friday, he's doing with his state employees that he has control over. And absent that, those employees will be instructed to wear a mask at all times. And hopefully we can get through this finally.
Thank you. Yep. Mr. Green, any comments? Mr. Ray?
Well, I enjoyed the July 4th break. I think the town looked awesome with our flags all over the place. It'd be nice I enjoyed the banner too. That was our first year we had the banner going across. And going back to Monty's asking, putting flags on the flagpole or on the telephone poles, and we can't do that. But, what we could do within our means, it was nice to see some patrioticness from the town. The Arts Committee has been meeting. We actually had our first in-person meeting, which was exciting. So moving forward into the school year, you're going to start seeing the crosswalks. We're going to get these 4 painted up and colored, so that'll be nice, and especially after the paving's happening on Trollinger and West Lebanon. And then we're going to start our fire hydrant paintings. So there's going to be some color popping around the town. I think we have 10 fire hydrants that Kathleen has picked out for downtown. I think our first one is going to be across the street from McGurk's. I want to thank the university for those. I don't know if you noticed those metal umbrella seats and stuff over there. The university donated them to us. They're really expensive, really nice. It just adds to the atmosphere of it. And does the board have to vote, or have we already voted to keep that through the school year? Or is that something that we're going to have to move forward with? Since we've done parking studies and now there's parking spaces.
That's a good question. I know certainly on the state roads, we've been told that with the expiration of the governor's orders, their authority to grant that is lapsed, and they just haven't started enforcing that yet. So we are working on some plans for North Williamson to see how we can work with DOT and make that permanent. And maybe some even long range things with North Williamson. We're trying to sort through all that right now. On a town road, I think we have the ability to maintain that, whether the railroad agrees to have that as a permanent feature or not versus kind of how we got into that because of COVID. We would have to look at that. And Kathleen has been researching how some communities allow the sale of alcohol, or I don't want to say the sale of alcohol, but drinking of alcohol in public ways. We've gotten a waiver through the state because of COVID. What do we need to do to make that permanent? And one of the things is we need to work with our police department, make sure that they're comfortable with the rules that get developed. So you will hopefully be seeing an ordinance change at some point that would address that issue about the possession of alcoholic beverages in certain areas on public ways, not just up and down the sidewalks probably, but in those specific locations.
And would that help change too for special events? So if like street closures happen and there's special events, that the town would have the authority to grant access to do that, or to grant a business to extend their alcohol permits?
If that is allowed under our name, yes. To a business, we have to figure out if that's allowed under.
Okay, that's great.
What's that?
If it's under the town's name, that's even better, because
Right.
It'll be.
Right. And does that include just possession, or does that include sale? Those are the things that we're trying to figure out through the maze of the alcoholic rules that the state of North Carolina has in place. Some communities seem to say, oh yeah, we just adopted an ordinance, and we're trying to track those down to see how that works and whether we can emulate that here. So those are all in the works that we're taking a look at as some of these special provisions are disappearing now.
Sure. But other than that, it's nice to see you guys again. I guess we're gonna have another meeting in a week.
Yep.
We're gonna get back on track for trying to move the town forward and navigating this Delta variant. I'm anxious to see what the university pulls moving forward with the students coming back. I know there's a lot of anxious students ready to enjoy our town. I hope our town's ready for them as well.
Kathleen has commented that the railroad has given permission for that to remain.
So is that a staff decision then, or is that a board decision to determine? if
I don't
it's-
remember the board voting on any of that, did we?
We brought it to you and everybody said it sounded like a good idea, but I don't know if there was ever a formal vote to utilize those parking spaces.
Do you think it'll take a formal vote?
It's lasted this long without one. So
I guess I'd throw that back, if the board wants to put your stamp on it, that's fine. To the extent that we have the ability to do it without coming to the board, we'll continue to do it.
Well, I think Kathleen's done a great job with the merchant meetings and stuff,
Yeah.
talking to the merchants too and asking their opinion about having it, because it's the ones that's who's affected, right? The ones that are losing the parking spaces for the businesses. So I think as long as everybody is okay with it right now, we'll just let it roll. But it looks pretty. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
I think we're happy with it.
I like it. Yeah.
I know there is some disagreement, or there was some disagreement among some of the downtown folks about whether, with the students coming back, whether the parking was more important than the dining. I don't know where that stands right now. I would look to the downtown committee to help work through those issues and see what we can keep doing.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes, so there was quite a bit of controversy on the Nextdoor app related to our change in water bills. So I know that Rich has gotten lots of questions about that. So I would just encourage, anyone who has those questions to reach out to Town Hall. So, because I do think that some of it does require some clarification, where they didn't see that there was going to be a change in the billing. They didn't realize that there were more days on the current billing. But then also just to be able to see that monthly report that we can pull, I don't know if there's a way that could be like more readily available to a homeowner. Like, I don't know if you could like log in on the website and see your water usage or something of that nature. I mean, I think that would be really beneficial to someone, looking at their water usage. And then the other thing too is that what is it?
Can't shower for a week. I'm
That's
already
right.
over my usage.
Well, I think it is helpful because I don't think people realize how much a sprinkler uses. It's like, oh, my sprinkler was only on for 30 minutes. That's continuous running for 30 minutes. Or, some people water their yards for it, forever. And so, and then also if you water your yard in the middle of the day, your yard doesn't even get it. It just dries up by the sun. So I do think that is beneficial information if there was a way for people to see that.
We can certainly check with our vendor to see if that would be if that's potential.
Yeah.
That-
Because, I mean, I found it beneficial in the one resident that I helped and you printed that off for me. I explained it to her like, hey, if you look at these days, I think it was really helpful.
That potential is there. It comes at an added cost. We talked about that with whether particularly some of our bigger water users might benefit from having that. This is when we went to the automated meter reading system. So it's there, and I can get some more information about what that cost might be if we wanted to explore it.
Okay. And then my other question is I know that the university, they pay one large water bill or they have separate metered spaces?
They have a stack of water bills about 3 inches high
Okay.
because everything's on a separate meter.
And then is Twin Lakes the same way, or is Twin Lakes, do you pay a water bill or do you just pay your water bill to Twin Lakes?
I paid at Twin Lakes.
Yeah.
And then
There's one
Twin
for-
Lakes
They have a
pays,
master meter?
They are master meter. They have their own water system that ties into ours. So there's a
but
master.
they pay our rates.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That was just a
Yes.
question for my own.
Yes.
And then next week, sorry, Davis, if I'm stealing your thunder, but next week, Davis, Rich, and I will meet to discuss further the equality resolution and or ordinance options. There were some holdups from outside organizations that we wanted to reach out to. Davis had not talked to Equality NC. So he wanted to meet with them because we had already met with them, Quinn, myself, and Rich, several months ago. So we're going to talk next week and hopefully we will have a discussion about that on Tuesday. That's it.
Yeah, I'd like to carry on to what Quinn had mentioned. I want to thank Kathleen and the staff, the 4th of July. I thought that was a great effort. Flags outside and the banner was good. I saw a lot of people, I think, appreciated it. The other thing I was going to ask you, about the status of the committee on the ordinance versus the resolution. Do we anticipate having something by September we can vote on?
I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about next week.
Okay, because the resolution should be something that's straightforward. I mean, unless we're going to get more legal counsel to it. I've seen the draft.
I thought
saw
we'd
the
be
draft.
ready to vote 2 months ago. So, I mean,
So Rich,
hopefully.
what's holding us up? Do you know?
The holdup has been communication with NC Equality, that back and forth between them and Davis.
What is this group? I'm not familiar with them.
NC Equality is an advocacy group for certainly LGBTQ rights. They have funded some pro bono legal assistance for communities that are looking at doing things. So they they've been involved in many of the other communities as they've adopted ordinances or what have you. We met with them at, back in April, as this process was starting. Davis wanted to be able to talk to them as well, show them the resolution, get their feedback on pros and cons, effectiveness, that kind of thing. They've had a hard time scheduling a time to meet. Are they meeting this week, Davis, or?
And Davis, didn't you also meet with a representative from the other group that we had gotten emails from?
So I was able to meet with ENC, Equality North Carolina, I think it was last week. And we had a conversation, and it was a good conversation. I enjoyed it. We had about 45 minutes worth of discussion. I gave them some background on where we were with our resolution and some of the aspects of our resolution. They're basically the lead organization for trying to get, for proposing NDO ordinances across the state of North Carolina. Kendra, their executive director, tells me that they believe Charlotte is going to become their 9th city or town in the state of North Carolina to have one passed here in the near future. We talked about aspects of our resolution, and there was no surprise. They're very firmly in the camp that they think we ought to go, that they think an ordinance is the best way to go. We had some of the very similar discussion that we as a board had, talking about why do you want to have a punitive phase to a situation versus not having a punitive phase? What does it accomplish? What does it encourage? What does it discourage? We had a light conversation about the word discrimination. You know, discrimination can be viewed two different ways. Discrimination in the sense that it's being brought up in this NDO ordinance. Discrimination in the sense that you look for the differences in things. How do you discriminate between a good job candidate and a bad job candidate? So all discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing, but discrimination in this sense is just viewed from one lens. And that was an interesting sort of exchange of ideas. There's also the idea that we have talked about, if you're going to do non-discrimination, how do you have perfect non-discrimination for both parties? If you take the situation of the baker and the couple that wanted the cake, each of those folks have a right to their point of view. But if you rule in favor of one over the other, then you've said one form of discrimination outweighs the other form of discrimination. So the discrimination for religious views against same-sex couples versus discrimination for not wanting to bake a cake for their wedding ceremony. Those were the two things at odds, and both groups have their rights in the view of the law. So how do you really make a judgment on something like that? So it was, as you can tell, without rehashing all of it, it was a very lengthy, very in-depth discussion. For me personally, I just wanted to pass this along, the information that I had out of that, to Emily and Rich. We had another good discussion about why do you want to have identified groups within the ordinance. I think we've got something like 9 distinct groups identified within the ordinance versus just stopping it up there past the second or third line in the resolution that says we're just going to treat everybody the same. And their point there was it really doesn't accomplish anything more or less. It just identifies what have historically been discriminated groups that have been discriminated against. So it doesn't add anything other than the fact it does point out that these are groups that have historically been discriminated against. So it was, it was a good discussion. But I would say it hasn't materially changed anything about what we have talked about as a board of aldermen, recognizing that there's different points of views on the board, but from the board itself, it didn't change anything materially. It was basically working within the confines that everybody basically is kind of set up as being their position. So with that, we could vote on it next Tuesday, or we can put it off into September. It's really up to the board and what you would like to do. The other point I was going to make, excuse me for rambling, the resolution, we put it all in front of you. We had some suggestions, Monty had some that he wanted to make. The mayor made some about the mentioning of the students. I asked the ENC about the students and how we should view the students, that they can be awfully reactionary, inflammatory, but they also bring fresh and new ideas. And it was just, again, the recognition that they are in the town. They're not voting members of the town. In some sense, they're not as experienced as other members of the town, but they are citizens of the town. So it's kind of that same neutral sort of position that we seem to get to on a lot of discussions. So whether we have the Elon University and the students and staff in there or not, if we just say it includes everybody in the town, currently living in the town, then it basically encompasses all those folks anyway. So just a quick recap in case you folks had any questions for me.
My thinking, with a resolution, there's no legal thing that you have to do. A resolution doesn't bind anybody to do anything. An ordinance, there's legality there.
Yes, sir. And that, Mayor, that was part of their point. They thought that right now, without a ordinance, there's no teeth. I'm trying to look back at my notes. There's no teeth or no impact to what was taking place out there, if indeed there is any discrimination taking place out there. So that was just their point and their reason. And I said, so then if you do want to enforce it with a penalty, why don't you make it a severe penalty that you truly, in the sense of a penalty, make it a penalty, not a $500 fine, not a $100 fine, as some of them recommend, but a $10,000 fine and pull the business license. And they said that their goal and what they're trying to propose, is reconciliation or conciliation, and not to just penalize folks unduly. And it's like, that seemed a little at odds with the idea of a penalty. If it's going to be a penalty, then, Mayor, as a football coach, you know that a penalty was one of those things that you just didn't want to have in a game.
Well, I had this on my notes when I met with Mr. Rodner about putting this agenda together. And for some reason, I just didn't bring it up. And I was wondering why you didn't bring it up.
On the agenda.
I mean, to put on the agenda.
It wasn't ready at the time.
Ready?
Yeah. Like I said, the communication process was much slower than we thought it was going to be. And it wasn't, he hadn't had a final meeting after Davis had met with them to say, all right, this is what the subcommittee recommends. So it just wasn't ready.
But Mayor, we're meeting on Monday. So if that's a desire for the board or not a desire for the board, we can meet that commitment.
Why don't y'all meet, and then I'll meet with you next Thursday, and we'll see if we ought to put the resolution on the agenda.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I won't be able to meet.
Tuesday.
We would need to go ahead and do that today, so it would be on agenda, official agenda
Yeah,
for Tuesday, right?
yeah,
And if we don't cover it, we don't cover it, right?
yeah.
And to answer Emily's question, I've tried to get in touch with Values North Carolina or North Carolina Values Group. I've sent them an email, I've called them, and I've called them 3 or 4 times, and I just haven't been able to get anybody to return my call. But as I look at their group, their focus seemed to be on family rights. And it gets into the area of children and abortion rights and those sorts of things. So I don't want to make that assumption because I haven't had a chance to talk to them, but just in looking at their website, reading some of their comments, that's what I was just able to get out of it. But I have not been able to get them to give me a call back or to set up a meeting with me.
Other comments?
Yeah, has there been any talk about, from just a North Carolina legislative issue about where this is going? I know it expired with the bathroom bill, for lack of a better word, I don't remember the number to it, but when it expired, then this kind of opened up the opportunity on a local level. Has there been any talk about that from a statewide level from the legislature?
Dave, you have anything to say about that with the people you talk to?
There's the feeling that the state is going, and I say that honestly and matter of factly, it's just a feeling. It's a feeling that the state is going to address it. As I've talked to a couple of folks with some connections at the state or had past connections at the state level, there's a feeling that the federal case that keeps getting, the Supreme Court case that keeps getting quoted in some of these, I think it's Bostic versus Clayton, actually settled that for same-sex and transgender folks, so that it was no need for the state to address it. So I'd say it's like most things, Mayor, it's kind of in that no man's land in between. No person's land, excuse me, let me correct that.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members and staff?
One comment I will make, got an email from Jeff Stein at the university today. And they are anticipating a vaccination rate amongst students coming in this fall. All the students as of this fall of about 95%. And employees will be somewhere on the order of 75%. So they've really made a real push to get people vaccinated, and I suspect they outstrip any other community in the county, certainly.
Well, I thought I'd read that the university is requiring
Yeah, I thought,
students.
They do.
But there are exemptions for students.
Where the exemption,
So there's health-related exemptions and religious exemptions.
and they don't have a mandate for the faculty and staff. It's optional, but they have to.
That's correct.
that seems fair.
They were
Unionized now.
anticipating upwards of maybe 300 exemptions for students. I don't know where they are exactly, but that was the rule of thumb they were anticipating. So they're looking about 95% of the student body being vaccinated this fall.
No other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thanks to everybody.
Till we meet again.
See you next week.